exactly 8 o'clock. I like being punctual. We are back here after a long time. Zinnia and I did our last immigration session a few weeks ago, and we've had a lot of people that have wanted us to come back because they find these really useful. So we are back to answer your questions, have a conversation with you. We are expecting today to be a full house. We've got a lot of interest in today's session. So I think we just want to set the scene here. I'm joined here by my colleague Zinnia. We are going to take immigration questions when we are going through this, but I just want to start off by, just expressing a lot of empathy for the people that are currently affected by what immigration has said, and more importantly, what immigration hasn't said. We're getting into week 9. And it is really unsettling, I think, for me as a professional who's been in this industry for such a long time, that our temporary migrant workers that the country has so much relied on, and I think we as a nation are seen to be humanitarian and setting an example for the rest of the world. But yet, getting to week 9, we still don't have answers for those people that are stuck overseas, that have got their houses here, they've got their cars here, they've got their stuff here. The employers, and I feel really sorry for the employers as well, because they are keeping those positions open. But how long can those employers keep those positions open? And I think, the longer immigration and the government waits to give us answers, the worse it is going to be for those people that are stuck. So I think I personally I'm deeply upset about this. I do work for AIMS Global as a managing director and a senior advisor, but I am also the policy chair for New Zealand Association of Migration and Investment. And I can confirm to you, and a board member as well, and I can confirm to you that there is work that NZMI is doing in the back end with the government and immigration. But it's almost like if the government wants to listen, they will listen. And so there's a lot of lobbying that's happening. So we are hoping that through these sessions, we can hear what you say and we can feed that back into the government. So there is work happening through NZMI as well. Zinnia, do you want to add anything before I open the session for questions?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I want to add, and I think I will reiterate that as we go along. I mean, we've got 45 minutes of having a conversation with our audience. And so we will cycle back to this concept. But for those that have just joined, one of the things that I do want to mention here is that, a lot of people, and even our clients as well, they're filing their student visas. Student visas are okay. They're filing their work visas with us, Essential Skills. And right now, Essential Skills, given the latest announcement that came through on the 13th, are going to sort of looking like they're going to be picking on that. Like that's the one they're going to be putting full force into. So it is very sensible for people to have a plan B, because I think it needs to be appreciated that the situation of the labor market is outside the client's control. It's outside our control. It's outside immigration's control. And while you can do very effective representation, and that will work most of the time, it is sensible for people during these times to have a plan B, because it's not a normal situation. It's not something they've been in before. So let's just start taking questions, and then I'll probably cycle back to this.
Yeah. So we have been contacted by a lot of people over the past few weeks. Immigration has, announced quite a few things in the last couple of weeks. Especially last week, we had the whole amendment bill, and there was a lot of noise, and there was a lot of opinions and what that means. So I just want to take this opportunity to try and simplify those things for people that are listening. As one of my colleagues told me today, the amendment bill will give the minister certain powers. So I think a really good connotation she used is, imagine the minister with the remote. Now, what buttons the minister is going to press, and when the minister is going to press it is sort of unknown. And just by holding the remote, we can't know how that's going to impact people. So I would strongly suggest that before you jump onto conclusions, hang 10. Immigration has announced a couple of things in the last few weeks. So there are things that immigration has announced around residence applications that will begin processing. And I think I just want to sort of set the scene here on that topic. Because even though residence applications will begin processing, immigration has made it very clear that it's only for people that are earning $51 per hour, or people that require registration. So that's across the SMC as well as the work to resident space. So for others that have got their residence applications with immigration in the system, please make plans to ensure that you have temporary visas for a while, because your residence applications are not going to get decided for a while. So there will be a little bit of backlog there. Zinnia, do you want to just add something there, please?
Yeah, so essentially what immigration said, what Arunima mentioned, those residence applications are being prioritized. They are priority 1. And then it comes to priority, the next after that is other onshore resident visa applications, which don't fall in those 2 categories. But in saying that, this is no way an indication that your application would be sped up. What this is saying is that they're going to do that, and then they're going to come to that other segment. And bear in mind, immigration is also, there could be a difference whether you have a case officer allocated or not. So the ones where the case officer is allocated, you have somebody to contact, they are in the queue already, they will be picked up. But the ones like, for example, EOIs that are submitted, you're not going to get a selection, they're still deferred. So I think that those expectations have to be clear as to which applications are moving and which aren't. Or which ones are very slow moving. So I think it's just, and we've had so many clients, I've had a client contact me today who is going to be on his 3rd essential skill visa in the duration of the residence being processed. And he's like, I'm sick of it. Like, I just have to file so many. But obviously I can't let him not file one. I have to file one because I can't let him go unlawful. So I think people need to manage those expectations that essential skill visa has to be processed. And it throws a spanner in the works because they have to advertise now if they haven't, because they've already availed that policy where you can submit an essential skills without advertising. If your SMC is in process, they've used it once, they've used it again after 6 months. So people just have to manage that expectation.
Yeah. Good. And I think the other thing that it's a very simple thing, but I've had a lot of questions around variations. Obviously, that's a very real thing. People are losing jobs, and it's very, very good, very easy for immigration to say that if you don't have a job, and there's been clarifications last week that immigration has said that if you don't have a job, we're not going to use that to deport you or revoke your visa, but you need to find another job. And I think one of the questions that we pushed back very strongly is that how are those people going to vary the conditions? Because currently a variation is a paper-based application. And it is almost shocking for New Zealand immigration system to be sitting on such simple provisions or answers to these questions for over 9 weeks. So just be careful that there are no answers around this. So if you have other people telling you, do this or do that, that's still stalled. So it's still paper applications, and immigration is saying quite clearly that try and get into online applications because that's what they can pick up. Okay, so I think we are building a few questions there. So I know that there will be quite a few questions building up. Just to sort of a disclaimer here, we may not be able to get through all the questions today because we've got less than 40. We've got about 40 minutes or so. We will finish at about 8:45 sharp, but we will try and get through as many questions as we can. If we can't get through to the questions, then we will come back and we will respond to every single individual on your comments. So we will absolutely come to you. So I'm going to start off. So Sanchit says, what would be the best option to stay in New Zealand for a longer period? I'm working as an IT engineer. He's a contractor. I'm on an open work visa and my visa is expiring in October. It's very hard to find permanent position because of my short visa status. I can possibly take that one, Sanchit. So we do deal with quite a few people in the IT space, and it's not uncommon for people in the IT area to be on contractual arrangements with their employer. So immigration says that if you've had a consistent history of working on contractual work, that's fine. But if your contract is not long enough, then at the time of submitting an EOI and time of submitting an invitation, and at the time that the residence is decided, you must at least have 1 year of contract with your employer. So, I would strongly suggest, there's a lot more questions I need to ask you. I would strongly suggest that you connect with me offline after this, and I can possibly ask you questions. But if you haven't got a residence and you meet those requirements, then I would strongly suggest that you start thinking about it. Zinnia, over to you.
There's a question here. So new amendment bill is also going to remove Section 49 conditions on resident visas. So at this stage, depending on the Section 49 condition, what we know is for those people who aren't able to enter the country to activate the resident visa, they are going to get an extension to be able to do that for up to 3 months, 6 months, 3 months. Which one is it? Is it 6 months or 3 months? I'll get back to you on that.
But we don't know when it's going to be implemented. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we still have to wait and find out how exactly that plays out. So, Kulwinder, if you were here, Runima gave a very good remote example. I suggest you repeat that. Now we've got more audience. Yeah. So I suggest you really repeat that.
People are asking about the amendment bill. I think what you need to understand is that there's a proposal of the powers. How those powers are going to be used exactly is unknown because that hasn't been advised. Those powers may be used to remove Section 49 conditions for people that are offshore. Those powers may be used to extend travel, expiry dates for people that are offshore, haven't been able to get to the country, or those powers may not be used for those. So I will not tell you a yes or no because we don't know. So I would strongly suggest that you wait. As soon as we have the answers, we have been quite regular on our Facebook page with posting facts. Daljit says, when can we expect the conditions might revoke from work visa by immigration? So I think I can understand the question. It's not really complete, but he's possibly trying to say that if someone's lost a job or they no longer have the job, when is it that immigration will revoke their work visa? If that's what you mean, Daljit. Immigration has written and sent confirmation that if you have been adversely affected by COVID-19 and you've lost jobs, your hours may be reduced, that they are not looking at taking compliance action. At this stage, the compliance action is focused on criminal activity. So going by what immigration has said, I would suggest that you're okay, but I wouldn't suggest that you just remain in the country without making any other arrangements to find another job. Immigration has also said, and this is something that we are advising clients, that if you don't have a job, you have no income at this stage, you're not really working. And at that stage, if you don't think that you've got another job looming around, consider applying for a visitor's, because at least that keeps you lawful in the country and that allows you to then apply for a visa at a later time when you're ready. Zinia, do you want to take the next one up, please?
Is it Yusuf's question is the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay, so how about skilled migrant category visa for mid-skill level employment, received EOI, how much time will this take? Received EOI. Did you mean receive ITA? I'm just going to let Yusuf give some clarity on that question, and then I'll cycle back to it. So Yusuf, just please offer some clarity in the comments. I'll pick up Enrit. She says, will there be any processing on company accreditation, accredited employers? So I'm assuming this means an application for an employer to become accredited. There's been of all the announcements that have come through, they've not touched on that. So it looks like if immigration is back on track processing applications, that one doesn't seem to have been affected if there are immigration officers available.
Add to that, I have been speaking to a few employers that have got their accreditation applications in the system. They have started trickle moving. So if you have, in fact, I was talking to an employer that's got their accreditation expiring quite shortly, and I did advise them to contact immigration because they applied on their own. If your question is that if you have an accredited application, a work to residence, a talent visa, and if that started moving, they have started moving as well. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question is, I have essential skills work visa with entry date 25th May. My work profession is under essential worker. My employer applied for exemption.
Take this one up, Zinia.
Yeah.
Hi, Uday. Nice to hear from you. And Uday, look, so, I know your case. I've done your case. We haven't heard from immigration on this. And that's exactly what I said, that this is something that the minister holds the powers to do. We are hoping that they're able to extend that travel date, because I know that your first entry date is the 25th of May. And I know that you've been really anxious, and I've been connecting with you offline as well. And I only wish that I had better answers to give you. But at this stage, immigration has not advised. And there's a lot of people like yourselves in the same position where immigration hasn't advised on those travel conditions. If the powers go ahead, because the bill has now passed, then there may be an option for that travel condition to be extended. Whether immigration does it on all temporary visas that are overseas, or whether they only do it on certain type of visas, we don't know. So just hang in there.
I can at this point, because I've now, while you were answering questions, I brought up that official information. I can actually read out the wording to you, which is proposed. We don't know how that's actually going to be implemented, but this is what was proposed. It says extend visa expiry dates for persons offshore who may not be able to travel to New Zealand within the validity of the visa for up to 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll answer.
I have been in touch with your employer, Uday, so I will connect with you offline. Then yeah, we can move on.
Okay. So Russell asked, does anyone know when immigration officers will be back working? Russell, they're working now. So they're not everyone's working. Some of them are working. Some of them are working remotely. There's a whole system that they've got in place. But in saying that, most of them are back now in New Zealand. Offshore branches remain closed.
Zazia, I can't really answer your question because your question says if there's with the current situation, are there any healthcare professionals outside New Zealand? I do not know, and how I don't quite understand your question, so I'll have to circle back to that one. Diljit, the bill passed so quickly, but the action has not been taken. So slow, hopes are getting less day by day. I absolutely agree with you, Diljit. I am equally frustrated. I am on quite a few WhatsApp groups, and it is very, very unsettling that that the government has been stalling these really important questions for such a long time. So, I can't say any more than that. Then, I think what's happening is it is an election year, so we should remember where we want to put our vote. So, yeah. Okay. Zinnia, we want to move on to Yusuf's question, please.
Received expression of interest and have supplied the documents to immigration. Okay, so I'm pretty sure you mean invitation to apply. So you've received ITA, you've supplied the documents to immigration. So with your residence application being processed, the priority ones, the $51 and registration ones, they'll be done first. Then immigration will come to yours. But depending on when you supplied the documents, if a case officer hasn't been allocated, you can expect it to take a bit more time. Whereas the ones where the case officers allocated and they were doing it, it just will put on hold. Those have reopened now.
Yeah. So Raman, your question is, you've been offered a job and your employer has given you a time frame to sort the visa out by the end of June. You will apply for a visa on the start of June. Would there be enough time to sort your visa out? No, is the answer. You are really pushing it because immigration, as you possibly know, that immigration is really backlogged. There is a lot of backlog that's now begin to trickle feed and start, immigration is beginning to move those queues, but I would suggest that the sooner you apply, the better it is. And if you possibly can negotiate an extension with your employer, because you would be very lucky if you're able to get a visa approved by then. And I think something that I do want to, and I think we'll let the questions build up, but a lot of people have been privately texting and calling us and our advisors, and they've been asking about the labor market changing and the announcements that immigration had last week around advertising. And, they've got essential skills applications in the system, whether those employers will need to re-advertise, whether they should advertise all of that now, what's going to happen to those applications. So I just want to take a couple of minutes to just cover that specific point. I am expecting quite a few questions to come up, but I just want to cover that question first. So I'm going to throw that question to Zinnia. Zinnia, do you just want to touch on and just explain people what immigration, just to set the scene on what the whole re-advertising requirement is, because there's a lot of rumors and a lot of panic out there.
So essentially, immigration says that normally, in normal circumstances, when you submit an application, to the time they assess it, whatever time's in the middle, labor market doesn't normally change. But situation due to the COVID-19 is such that if you submitted your application a month or two ago, by the time immigration picks it up, everything has changed. So as a result, immigration is will be asking some people, and this is very important for me to say because it's not a blanket rule, they will be asking some people to provide updated evidence that no suitable New Zealanders are available for the job. That's the first thing. The second thing is they also want to know the role is genuine still. That means it's for real work and can be sustained. The third thing is they want to make sure the employer is financially sustainable. So the role is financially sustainable for the duration of the visa. So these are three things they're going to be rechecking. So even though you submitted your application, when they process it, these 3 things they will recheck. And as a part of proving these 3 things, you may or may not need to advertise. And an example immigration gives is like that of the DHB, where COVID-19 has not really caused any issues. We know no New Zealanders are, so they will not have any issues there because they are DHB and they were essential. But this is kind of what the crux of it is.
And I think I am telling people quite clearly that if you look around, we know for a fact that there will be some industries that will be impacted. So if you have your applications for essential skills and you're working in the hospitality sector, possibly the tourism sector, retail sector, you possibly need to have a conversation with your employer because you may be asked those questions. So, it is quite case by case, and this is possibly the time when your case needs a really strong representation because it's the story that needs to be told. So everybody doesn't need to do the advertising. It is definitely case by case, and some industries are more prone than the others. I think we'll circle back to the questions. So Zenia, I'm going to put this out to you. So this is Sikandar. He says, I had a residence visa for the last 2 years. I came to India in mid-Feb, was booked to come back to New Zealand mid-April. The border closed and he was stuck. He has a travel date expiring on the 16th. Well, his travel date has expired on the 16th of May. And what happens to him now?
Travel date has expired. Oh, residence visa. Okay, so he couldn't travel back. So in that case, what would happen is, and again, we have to wait for the bill to come out, but let me read this. So the bill actually would allow people whose visas have expired because they cannot travel, because of that specific reason, they're offshore and the visa has expired because they couldn't travel. They are going to get an extension for up to 6 months. Now, what we don't know is when this extension will start, and it will be for maximum of 6 months, but we don't know when it will start. So they could start it like 3 months later and then carry 6 months from there. So we've got to wait and watch.
Yeah, so I think it's quite important to understand why the government is doing this, because if a lot of the people that were affected were applying for variations all of together, that's going to be even additional work for immigration that they absolutely can't cope. So it is very much to ease immigration situation and officers being able to process these bulk of applications. But Sikandar, please keep an eye on our Facebook page because we are absolutely going to let everybody know as soon as something comes out.
I'm going to add here about the bill because it's a question that I'm seeing, it's a couple of times it's shown up here. And a question was asked whether the bill is going to disadvantage or favor the migrants. It was just asked above there. And I just want to add a comment here that immigration has confirmed, and there is MBIE's report has come out as of the final report on the bill. It doesn't explain how the bill will be used, but it answers some key questions. And this is what it says. The bill cannot be used to materially disadvantage onshore migrants. So it cannot be used to materially disadvantage. A little minor disadvantage is okay. And the minor disadvantage would be like, for example, you have to quarantine yourself. And so for most part of it, the bill cannot be used to materially disadvantage visa holders. That's the goal of the bill. However, for example, they're cutting off offshore applications. Offshore people can't apply. That is a disadvantage, but bear in mind, they are not visa holders. So it cannot be used to materially disadvantage visa holders. So there's some comfort there.
Yeah, but I think my heart still goes out to those people that are stuck offshore and they are visa holders. And, the bill, unfortunately, doesn't even cover them. So it is quite disheartening as to what's going to happen to the government, So if this video ever gets to the government, I am strongly urging the government to sort of open up and give those questions, even if it's a no, so that then the appropriate action can be taken. So going back to Zazia's question, if there are job opportunities for caregiver or any New Zealand immigration laws for people working as a caregiver outside New Zealand. Okay, well, that's not, I'll have to address that individually. It's not really a New Zealand immigration question. Sabrina says, I've submitted all my documents for SMC, acknowledged by immigration, processing time will take more than... Okay, so how will such applications be considered if the pay scale does not fall into the SMC high priorities? I think, Sabrina, we have covered this quite a few times, so I'm just going to move on to the next question. You can expect delays in that area. Yusuf says, are there any changes coming in partnership category? If a primary applicant is having an essential skills work visa, can he or she file partnerships? And I'm going to throw that back to you since you're the partnership expert here.
I'm going to ask for clarity on the question. If a primary applicant is having an essential skills work visa, can he/she file a partnership visa? I'm assuming after the expiry of the essential skill Visa, just offer some clarity, Yusuf. We'll have to cycle back.
I'm just going to sort of add in here, Yusuf, before we move on to the question, because my understanding of your question is that if you hold an essential skills, can your partner go on to essential skills? So currently, if you are on a mid skills, essential skills or higher threshold, you can support partners in a work visa. If you are on a low skill, there is no partner support unless they, transition rules apply. But mid 2020, there was a conversation that immigration was going to allow for visitors, for people that are going on the low skills work visa. Whether that's going to happen or not, we are waiting. We are assuming that will still happen. If your question is something else, please do clarify so Zinia can take it up.
To answer the first part of your question, are there any changes coming up in the partnership visa category? No.
Yeah, nothing that's been announced.
Policy is not changed yet. I'll let you take the next one.
I have essential work visa. Did I able to change my visa as VOC? Other town I need to apply? And I think that's a really good question. I think I'll just sort of reiterate your question. So your question talks about variations. I did touch on this a bit earlier. So if you are currently in an occupation and you're looking at changing cities or you're looking at changing your occupation, then you do need to have a new essential skills work visa because your labor market is changing and the region's changing. The only time you can apply for a variation is if you were working with an employer A in position Y, and now you're going with employer B in position Y, and you're in the same city, you can possibly look at applying for a VOC. Currently, a VOC is a hard copy application, and there is obviously problems with paper applications. And that's something that we have asked immigration for the longest time, and I think through NZMI as well, we pushed it to immigration if they can allow for an inbox to be set up so that these applications can be applied digitally. And it's quite unfortunate that no answer has been received. So looking at your situation, Jovi, you're probably looking at a new visa if you're looking at moving towns. If you want to know more, just connect with me.
Okay, so Remya asks, I'm principal applicant for residence visa and I applied without including my family. At the same time, I have applied for a partner visa for them. Is it a hindrance for my residency application to be accepted? It is a question that will be asked as to why you haven't included your family in the residence application. So as long as you've answered that, but I would suggest that if there are some personal reasons or if there's some special reasons why you haven't included your family, probably not the best place to answer in the comments. Just private message us so I can actually give you some more concrete information around that.
I just want to add here for you, Remya, that if you, and I think for those of you that are looking at putting the SMCs, if you do have a partner and you are in a relationship, a genuine relationship, even if you haven't been living together with a partner for a year, you still need to declare your partner in the application. Now, immigration uses the term include, but that's obviously very confusing. So I like to use the term declare. So even if you've got a partner and you haven't met the one you're living together and you're applying for residence, you absolutely need to declare the partner because otherwise you will have issues when the partner is later on applying for residence.
So inclusion means when they're getting residence with you, and declaration is just as a part of that. You're just telling immigration you've got a partner, but they're not getting residence with you.
Yeah. So I'm picking up this comment. I think Raman's made a really, really important comment. Are we expecting essential visas to be changed into open visas? As a lot of people expected this to happen. And now that the law is passed, what are the chances? So Raman, just to clarify a few things, the law has not been passed. The bill has passed. How the law is going to look like and how that's going to materialize into actual instructions has not been passed. So, and I know that there's been a few practitioners saying that those visas will become open, but don't hang on to that hope just yet because nothing's been announced. And I wish that happens because that would be much easier for a lot of temporary visas to look for jobs and switch between employers. But at this stage, the essential skill visas have not been announced that they will be opened up. So do not hang on to that as law.
So you take, Arunima, you're the student visa expert. You take Omar's question. Yeah.
So Omar is joining us from Egypt. Hi, Omar. So what are the chances to find financial aid for postgrad studies in costly NZ universities? Most of the jobs require local presence. Okay. So I think if your question is around any financial support that you can get with universities or tertiary providers with New Zealand, the answer is no. You need to have self-funded education. You may be able to be eligible for scholarships which means, or bursaries, which means discount off your tuition fees, but there is no financial aid for international students coming in. The financial aid, if any, may be available in your home country because you belong to that home country. You can't use, there's no financial aid for international students in New Zealand. Most of the jobs in my major require local presence experience. The thought of, yeah, and I think just on the second question, the borders are closed. There has been this flying conversation about some borders opening to international students. I know that that caused a lot of anger amongst the temporary visa holders and work visa holders that are stuck. But at this stage, nobody knows when those borders will open or whether they will open before the other for the other cohort. So at this stage, international education New Zealand will have to be sort of post that.
Okay, so I'll take Gentian's question. I'm currently in healthcare job with open work visa post-study. I'm wanting to apply for central skilled work visa. Is this possible now? Yes, it is. Healthcare sector is actually quite, I would think that, because it's been working through, it's been open throughout alert level 4, people have not lost their jobs in the healthcare sector. In fact, they've hired more. So I think your labor market test would also be not as challenging as some of the other professions. So yeah, absolutely possible.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I use, and an example that I use to explain clients, is that imagine that you've applied for a job, so there's an ad on Seek that has been applied. Now, if that ad is for, say, a retail manager or retail supervisor, say at a gas station, right? So I'm a New Zealand citizen. I can actually get up and do that job. I've got enough management experience, and that's something that I can do because it doesn't really require any niche skills that are very hard to acquire. But if there is a job for, say, a health caregiver or a nursing support worker or one of those healthcare positions which require you to have a level 4 certificate in healthcare and all of that, which I don't have, then I as a New Zealand citizen can't apply. Which means that if your position's more specialized, there's a smaller pool of people applying for those jobs. And I think that's where the logical explanation starts with these. Immigration sort of explanation comes in a bit later. I'm just going to keep skipping because there's a few other comments coming in. I'll come into Kanchan's question. For essential skills work visa, as I am an assistant manager and new visa rules say low and high skill temporary visa will be on basis of more than 25 per hour as a high skill visa, which will be 3 to 5 years. Also, what will be partner status who is already on dependent visa? Will this be visitor work? So I don't actually understand your question, but I'm going to try and interpret and understand and just make up what you're saying.
I think what you're asking is possibly, with the ANSCO lifting, then it's just remuneration based. That's the possible new policy here.
Right. So if it's going to be, if you're talking about the REM increase and essential skills now being based not on ANSCO but actually on pay scale, the government did announce that was going to be from what it was announced, I think late last year, November last year, that it was going to kickstart from mid of this year. There's been no announcements that won't happen. So you can assume that that's still going to go ahead. And it's actually $25.50. It's not $25. And that would classify you for a mid-skill. Zinnia, am I missing anything here? Do you want to add to this?
Partner status was already on dependent visa. So if you're on a 3-year base, so if you're earning $25.50 or more, you'll get a 3-year, irrespective of your ANSCO. And then your partner will get 3 years as well, partner visa.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, what was also announced back late last year is that if you do end up going on a low skill, that your partner or your dependents can still go on a visitors. Like all of this was announced last year. There's been no announcement since then as to whether these rules will still come in or not. So, just that's a disclaimer from us that those rules are not there yet. Zinnia, I'm going to leave it over to you.
Work visa holders stuck overseas. So I got my book out because I actually wrote things in here that I think I should just say because there's a lot of people are asking the same question. So I think I'll just read to you what I wrote here. So for work visa holders that are stuck overseas, the official answer from immigration is that you cannot travel because the borders are closed. When borders open and your work is still available, that means your job in New Zealand is still available, you can return to New Zealand on that visa. However, if in between that time, if you lose your job, then that visa is not valid. Or if your visa expires, then of course you can't travel. You can't travel on an invalid or an expired visa. So the two conditions, border opening and your job should still be there, and that's the same job on the visa. only then you can travel. And that's where I think what, Runima has been talking about when the session started is it's a tough situation.
Yeah. So I think that kind of leads in. Do you want to take up Antred's question? Because I think you kind of read that earlier as well.
Yeah.
So there's a follow-up question.
So should the main visa holder be made redundant on a accredited employer visa? What happens to the partner who is also working? The group application will then entirely be affected. The partner can apply for work visa, but will the family then indirectly be unlawfully in the country with the delays in the application variations? Any suggestions, please? Okay, so Antred, what would happen in this situation is where people have lost their jobs, immigration has made official comments that they will not be taking any compliance action against these people in the first instance, and they will take a very reasonable approach. The reasonable approach can be interpreted as that you're making efforts to now look for other work. So I would say in your situation, the main person, the main visa holder, should start looking for another job. As soon as they are aware of the fact that they have been made redundant, and the partner just stays put. And what would need to be done is within a reasonable amount of time. So for example, say 30 days or a week or 2 weeks, you would need to inform immigration that this has happened and we're now looking for other work. They aren't going to do anything. They aren't going to take any action, but telling them in advance, that would do is immigration would be like, okay, you're trying to be transparent with them, but they're not going to do anything about it. So I would approach that in this way, based on what you've said. If you think that there is more that you want to explore, I would suggest that you just private message us and I'll reply there.
Yeah. I think that's gonna. I've had a few people that have asked me the question that Raman's asking, which is that, and that's what we started the session with, that if you are looking at a plan B, and look, we all understand it's a difficult situation. We're all going through this together in different ways. There's different things affecting each one of us. And for those of you that are looking at a plan B, and if the plan B is to sort of study in New Zealand, then we are offering consultations, free of charge consultations, where we are helping identify those courses that are in the skill shortages. Because if you are looking at studying again, you don't want to be caught out by studying another business course, because at this stage, those are the people that are going to be the most affected. And we are running these education sessions with different providers, and we're talking about these courses and what those courses lead to, and we're talking about scholarships and bursaries, and if the payments can be made in different installments to help onshore students. So if someone is considering studying, I would strongly suggest that you reach out, because it's not a conversation that I can have in an open forum, but it's more a to and fro. We kind of need to see how academically strong you are, because you don't want to go into a course that you'll end up failing. So there's a lot of things that we need to ask to see where your aptitude sits, to see if that can match up with the skill shortages. Soumya, Zania, there's a question from Soumya here. It says, hi, my birth certificate paper to be submitted to for ITA has been stuck due to the lockdown back home. I'm worried that my 4-month time period might be over soon. What would happen, please? That's a really good question.
Soumya, what you would do in this case, provide immigration evidence that you're trying to obtain it, and that if you can provide any evidence that it has been stuck, write a declaration, send it off, courier off the documents. Yeah,
and I think immigration has said it quite clearly that they will accept applications even if they're incomplete, as long as you can give us an explanation.
Yeah. And so with your explanation, just make sure you get that JP attested.
Yeah. Zania, I'll throw this one back to you as well. From Happy Nagra, it says, are they going to change visa process under or not to follow ANSCO? I think what it means is, how is the ANSCO going to impact the applications?
So right now, of course, we're waiting to see when the policy comes into effect. But essentially, the policy is going to change around some aspects of it. So visa process is going to, but there's some concepts like sustainability, genuineness of the role, employer compliance, labor market testing in most scenarios as well. All of these are going to remain strong, and actually they're going to strengthen as well because of the COVID-19. Immigration wants to really make sure the employers are good to hire a migrant worker. So they really want to know the employers can actually continue trading for the duration of the visa and things like that. So so all of that part remains the same, but the policy around, like the rules around it might change, but that back end stuff will not.
Yeah. unless the ANSCO disappears from essential skills. I think one of the things that I want to ask these questions, because we've gone through quite a lot of questions together, we're trying to kind of go through as many, and you're more than welcome to keep asking, and we'll try and go through as many. But one of the things that I do want to talk about is, and there's a lot of fear out there. In fact, I've met with clients who sort of saying, you know what, my employer's already taken the wage subsidy. I'm super going to be stuck with my work visa because he's taken the wage subsidy. That's an absolute myth. If your employer has taken wage subsidy, the reason for wage subsidy is to be able to, help those employers that can retain the staff that have lost business because of the lockdown. And so a lot of businesses have taken wage subsidy. It doesn't mean that those applications, they will not be able to support for work visas. What it means is that immigration wants to know, or would want to know, what is the future looking like. So there's a lot of businesses being impacted, but then a lot of businesses have made a lot of progress to bounce back even stronger. And that's the story that needs to be told. In fact, I think, Zania, you were telling me there's a written confirmation from immigration on this, the wage subsidy.
Yes. So it says here, actually, I've got it open. If you just give me a second, I can actually read out the official comments from them around wage subsidy. So people get an idea of what we're saying, but you have to give me a second to open it. So the wage subsidy part, it just says that just because you've taken wage subsidy does not mean that the business is not sustainable. I'm just scrolling to it. Bear with me. Okay, there we go. The fact that an employer receives funding from COVID-19 wage subsidy scheme does not by itself indicate that the employment offered is non-genuine, unsustainable, or not full-time. The subsidy provides support when many employers are unable to operate due to restrictions required to manage public concerns about sustainability of the particular employer.
Yeah. So I think we kind of lost Zinia there for a fraction of a second, but I think it's pretty clear that just because your employer has taken wage subsidy does not mean that, the employment's not genuine or there's concerns around sustainability. So please do make sure that you understand that point. We are coming to almost the end of our session, and I think we can take a couple of more questions. Shavi, there is a question from you that I don't understand what you're trying to say. Zinia, can you make sense of the question?
I was just checking on immigration site. They're saying if you want to apply for residency in 2021 with the new rules, what it means for 200. I would assume it means 2020. I don't know. I'm assuming it means 2020, but what we'll do is, Shavi, can you just retype the question and then we'll cycle back to it. Yeah. I think at this stage, there are a couple of things that I do want to discuss about the latest immigration announcements. One of the things is just a couple of main things for people to note, that for those that are thinking about applying for residency and EOIs and all of that, or if your residency is currently in process, it is, if you have lost your job or reduced hours, or the money you're getting paid is not 25 per hour, so it's not under your residency rules are not being met. Immigration is saying, even though they're not taking compliance action, you are in breach of your visa conditions. So just remember that. So at some point, an explanation could be asked for it. So it's important to keep that in mind, and the compliance processes that you're having with your employer be very transparent. The second thing is that with the labor market changes, also immigration has clearly said that don't go ahead and just start advertising. Like, wait for immigration to contact you or your advisor, and then do whatever you need to do. Like, because if you start advertising now and you submit the advert and immigration doesn't pick it up for, say, another month or so, or 2 months, again, it would be old. So just immigration said, wait for us to contact you. And the other thing is that if you are currently, and this is for like people on talent or accredited, a lot of people are coming up, they're 24 months and they can apply for residency under accredited employer over the next 6 months, but they are not meeting the threshold because of reduced hours. Unless your hours come back to normal, you cannot apply for residency under that category. You have to wait for your hours or for your salary to come back, for the policy to be met, even though your 24 months are up on that visa. You have to wait for that. And I think those are the few things that I really just wanted to say. And about the labor market testing, immigration has released advice that needs to be given to immigration officers on how to assess it. I would strongly suggest for anybody who gets this request, a PPI or a concern letter from immigration saying they're not satisfied that your role is genuine, that the role is sustainable, or they think that New Zealanders are available, I would strongly suggest that you don't try and tackle this on your own, because it is find an advisor. If you have an advisor, engage with them, because the advice that immigration has released to their own officers on how to assess it is fairly technical, but it's also very overall and very subjective. It's very holistic, and somebody who doesn't know immigration policy inside out is going to fail.
Yeah, and I think what I've been telling people, I've worked in the immigration industry. I've been a licensed advisor since 2009, and I think what I tell people quite strongly is that not everything that an immigration officer is going to push back on or ask you is going to be legit. There's a lot of times that immigration officers are new and they're not sure about doing those applications. So I think now more than ever, you'd really need a strong advocate on those applications to be able to sort of push back and tell the real story. And I think our team at AIMS Global has been offering free consultations. So our first consultation is free. It's a no obligation consultation. So if you do have any specific questions, if you do want to talk about your case and you really don't know where to go, even if you have another advisor and you want a second person check, you're more than welcome to talk to us. Anybody that we haven't responded to today, because we need to cut this off now, we will be coming back to you individually. But hopefully you found this session useful. We will be doing another one of these in the next couple of weeks, probably 2 weeks from now. But if you have any questions, you know exactly where to reach us. So guys, hang in there. Stay safe from any rumors. It is very stressful. Just hang in there. And if your employers are looking at sort of pulling out the position, see if you can try and negotiate leave without pay with them, so you still are hanging in there. And if there's any way that we can help, please let us know. So take care, guys.
I think just before we wrap up, there is just one thing I want to leave everybody with. A lot of employers are taking proposals from their employees as to how they can retain them. So because a lot of businesses are going through restructuring, I would suggest that the employees put their best foot forward, and with the essential skills. It is to be understood that, say, if you're on $25 an hour, even if you go down to 30 hours a week, you're still compliant. So offer that to your employer to give them some relief as well. But yeah, I would probably just say that when we're leaving on this note, also, like, if you guys are, if you just keep an eye on our Facebook page as well, because we are posting as soon as an information comes through, 1 hour to read it, to digest it, and then it goes back on there in very simple English, very simple words. And I think our Facebook is a really great source for your information. If anything, it's just sometimes that people will be like, oh my God, I know so much. It might confuse you more, but that's where you can ask us, and we're happy to provide clarity to anybody who needs it. So yeah, and all these student visa sessions that Arunima discussed as well, we talk about courses that are skill shortages with different institutes. They're on our Facebook as well. And we've got, I think, a whole bunch coming up as well.
Thank you. With that, we're 2 minutes over time, and I'm going to end it here. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Zinnia. Have a good night, all of you, and we will see you soon.